Let's start. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today as we talk about scaling your startup across borders, how to effectively manage your remote team. So this event is brought to you in partnership with Deel, and it's actually the third in this series. Okay, let's do a quick poll. We want to know who here are in a remote team setup and like what kind. So there's a question on your screen. If you could kindly answer that. Hang on, let me just launch that. Sorry, can you guys see the poll? All right. Okay, so while everyone answers the poll, let me just go over some house rules. So first, we definitely invite you to join the discussion. You can type your thoughts, comments, insights about the topic in the chat widget. You can see it there. Second, the floor is always open for your questions. Our panelists will be taking questions, so please do type them in the Q&A widget. Thirdly, this webinar is being recorded. We will be posting the recording on our online channels, and we'll also be sending you the link in an email after the webinar. All right, so has everyone answered the polls? Can we take a look at what it says? Okay, I seem to be having a problem seeing the polls. So I'll share it with you after the discussion. So let's just move this forward. So I would like to turn over the floor to our moderator, Meltem Kuran.
Hi, everyone. Really nice to meet you. I'll start off by introducing myself. My name is Meltem Kuran. I'm currently in Istanbul, Turkey. I also spend half of my time in Canada. I work as the head of growth at Deel. Deel is a payroll and compliance software built for international teams. So what we allow is companies to hire employees internationally. Why we're doing this webinar is we have, quite frankly, we have a pretty vested interest in making sure that everybody feels comfortable going international. This is not about us selling ourselves, but this is mostly about having conversations about remote work so that more people take that plunge with us. As the head of growth, my duties there are to basically grow our revenue, take care of our marketing activities. Today, we are 275 people spread across 46 countries. And actually, before everybody joined, we were just discussing with Abhinav that we don't have an HR team. We onboarding of all employees with our own software. So it's been a pretty wild ride. We've been around for about a few years, became a unicorn around in April of this year. So I'm super excited to be here today to discuss and meet, introduce everybody to you. So why don't we kick it off with Jonathan Hall, who is the Senior Director of Business Development at Rapyd, to introduce himself.
Thanks, Meltem. Really excited to be here. And as someone who's worked remotely in previous organizations, I can understand the importance of this topic to a lot of leaders, team members and stakeholders. Rapyd as a business, similar to yourself, is a global company. We're a fintech as a service platform that helps companies enable and accept payments and send payments internationally. So, what this means essentially is we power local and cross-border commerce. We have a lot of clients, of course, in the e-commerce space, marketplaces, and even payroll, because sending money to people is something that we do a good job of. I'll hand over to the team. Thanks.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Next up, we have Ilya Kravtsov, founder and CEO of PouchNATION. Ilya, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, for sure. Thank you. Yes, my name is Ilya. I've been running PouchNATION. I founded it about 7 years ago. So we specialize in entertainment and hospitality softwares. In particular, everything related from guest management to cashless and contactless payments. We've grown the company from being just based in Singapore to now 6-7 countries. So we have physical entities in all those places, and we've been working remotely, I would say, even before the pandemic. So for us, in some sense, it was not a major change. So yeah, I'm happy to be here and happy to contribute to these discussions, which I think is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. And last but not least, my team member, Abhinav Krishna, who's the head of expansion of APAC here at Deel.
Hey, thanks, Meltem. So I think some of you guys know me in Singapore itself. Yeah, so I had the expansion for Deel in APAC. Frankly, I was one of the first employees in Asia, and we were trying to see that how Asia is going to perform, where are the clients being based, and we got a huge group of people who started joining the Deel platform. And because of that, today we have our head of Australia, New Zealand, head of Japan, head of Hong Kong, head of Southeast Asia, India. And when I joined, I think when I was talking to Alex, as CEO, we were under 30 people. When I joined, we were under 50 people. And today, as Meltem said, we are close to 300 people in 46 countries. Everywhere we only use Deel as a platform. But the main idea about this webinar is to raise more awareness around how to manage your remote team, how to manage your remote members, when you should set up the entity, etc., which we have been doing. And yeah, that's what we want to take forward with Rapyd and PouchNATION.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the introduction. Well, let's dive right in. I don't think any one of us are necessarily interested in having those fluffy conversations here today. So I want to ask a question that's going to kick us off pretty strong. Most of the conversation around remote work today is that it's amazing and it's great. And sometimes it works and other times it doesn't. And there are some challenges with that. And despite of that, there's still a lot of companies that continue to build remote teams. So I'd like to explore, what pushes every team here to build remotely, knowing that sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And Abhinav, why don't you kick us off?
For sure, yeah. So overall, in the last 8 months and even before that, I may have talked to maybe 500 plus companies, and everyone talks about building the team first, right? And people think that COVID has actually pushed people to go towards remote teams, which is not the case, which I've realized. It has just accelerated. It has acted as a catalyst to start doing things. There are 4 things which people always worried about. One, they think, oh, am I going to find the right talent in another country? And which I call it a total HTTP model. So H stands for hiring, plan is in hiring. Second is T, which is like, oh, how am I going to train someone? I sit in US hours and that person is in Asia hours. How should I train? Second T comes with tracking or trust, which a lot of companies are doing in-house, where they integrate their Salesforce with DBT, with they are doing a lot of database management to track each and every component. So that tracking is also connected with trust, that how you trust someone who is sitting remote. And the fourth part is, which is the payroll, where the problem happens is, oh, how should I pay? How much should I pay? Who cares about benefits? Who doesn't care about benefits? And this is the category which I've seen is one of the biggest issue amongst people, because if you hire someone overseas who don't know you, they will be like, give me advance payment. And the client is like, why should I pay you advance? Because you might not do the work. And this guy's like, what if I do the work and you don't make the payment to me? And that's where the deal comes into picture, what we do. So these are the 4 areas which I see is one of the most challenging part when any startup is looking to hire remotely. And people are trying to solve one of those problems, or they're stuck one of them, and then they just don't go ahead and hire someone remotely, and they want to hire someone in their own country. COVID has acted as a catalyst. COVID has provided a lot of innovation in this category so that people can start hiring and start building teams and start trusting and start making those payments. And that's what we are doing at Deel as well. And that's what we believe is getting solved in this remote work. But those are the 4 problems. Happy, I think Ilya and Jonathan will have a bit more hybrid model, given they have incorporated their own company. Some of them work remotely, some of them didn't. Would be interesting.
Awesome. Yeah, Jonathan, do you have anything to add? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I guess, regarding challenges, I think, things we're all aware of and perhaps a little bit intangible, but, a really big one from my perspective is visibility and alignment, making sure that, the person or persons are really focused on and progressing towards the objectives that the team has set, I think is a really important fact. And distance makes that hard to do, but nonetheless, super critical. I think the second thing that I would say from a challenge perspective is just knowledge sharing, because in fast-growing businesses, when you're developing new products, when you're identifying new best practices, when the teams are moving quickly, I think sharing knowledge in a digestible but meaningful manner is really critical, because sending it in an email to someone once and then it getting lost, that's not best for the organization and its sustainability, its future growth. I think putting it in a static document that's never updated is not what's best. So I think it takes a really active effort to make sure that knowledge is shared. From a benefits perspective, particularly from a sales background that I come from, I think market penetration and reach is a really good one. So, having someone on the ground in Taiwan, as an example, is really important if that's a market that matters to you compared to the US, because, a US person can do their best, but, some of the challenges that were mentioned before around time zone and things like that means the results will be slightly different. I'm a big believer in product localization and the insights that you can get from having someone in the local market. Strategically, or strategic flexibility, I think is great. Starting with a light touch, maybe with one person in a market, then adding more as you build success. I think there's some of the benefits of remote team, that flexibility. And then I think, as Abhinav said earlier, access to talent. In the 1970s, 80s, 90s, this concept was a little bit different, but as globalization kind of spreads, there's some really good people in Indonesia. There's some really good people in Australia. There's some really good people in these different markets. And I think, being able to tap into those resources and take them on the journey that a business goes on is really, really important to the company's success. Ilya, let me know if you have some other thoughts.
Yeah, no, look, for me, I would love to add one point, I think, and you said it all very well already, but what we notice is that, and we, I said, we do have offices and we do work remotely, so we experience a little bit both. And I think the key for me is how to change your organization from being an input company to an output driven company, right? So, and I think this is where we are working a lot with our teams, because some of the employees are still very, kind of, okay, I go to work 9 to 5 and I'm present, and that's good enough, right? But in reality, it's not good enough, right? And this is something that we are really working internally and saying, okay, how can we say, okay, I don't care whether you actually work 9 to 6 or you work 9 to 4 or whatever is the case, but what I care is that the output you produce in the time you work, right? And we took a conscious decision not to measure the hours put by our employees during, working from home, right? I don't know how much they work, right? And I don't want to know, but we're really focusing on transforming the company towards like this output driven and making sure that the employees understand that. And that is a challenge. And that is a challenge for me, and how to monitor that, how to make it concrete, and how to make people realize that that's what they're here for. So that's
actually,
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's insane, and that's kind of very important too, because a lot of times when companies are going international or remote, they think, well, how am I going to make sure that these people are actually doing their work? And Abhinav, you mentioned it, at trust. Jonathan, you mentioned that accountability. I think there's a trend here, and Ilya, you mentioned it around being an output-driven organization and not necessarily an input one. So with let's dig a little bit deeper there. How do you engage, how do you ensure that your team members stay engaged and productive in a remote setup? Is there any way that you can track to make sure that the output is completed, that the work actually gets done, instead of not necessarily tracking the hours of the employees, but like the work that was supposed to get done actually gets done? Jonathan, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I mean, from a tracking perspective, something that we, or in my working life, has found being more successful is, a more senior type of candidate often suits a remote worker, because they have the resiliency, the experience, and potentially the perseverance to kind of overcome some barriers that come with distance. I think, something I really benefited from earlier in my career when I was, new to the corporate world, was actually that face-to-face contact. So, I certainly have a preference towards experience when it comes to remote working. But, kind of thinking about how we approach and measure success and help people be successful when remote working, I kind of think about it in kind of two key buckets. One is methodologies, and then the other, of course, is tools. So, methodologies that we try to engage at Rapyd are, short, frequent contact, finding a reason to pick up the phone or send someone a Slack message. Doesn't have to be work related. Making an active effort to ensure communication isn't transactional. So I'm not just contacting someone to ask for help. Maybe I'm contacting you because it's your birthday, or just because I want to have a chat and talk something about our social lives. I think a focus on highlighting achievements, milestones, and saying thank you is really important, because it gives people visibility into the other great work that's going on, and also it lets people know that they're appreciated. And then, from a tools perspective, anything that kind of helps with collaboration, sharing, and visibility, I think is always a win. Ilya, please let me know what you think.
Yeah, look, it's a challenge, and I think keeping people engaged remotely, it's not an easy task, right? And I said, look, if you go in the morning in the office and you have a cup of coffee together, right, that engagement is naturally created, right? Creating that engagement over a Zoom call, it's a little bit forced, and this is where, I think for me, I'm a big advocate of creating really great cultures for organizations. And I think creating that engagement should be a way of more doing it spontaneously somehow, right? Obviously, if you're just on the 30-minute Zoom call, it might be more difficult, but there are tools to do so, right? So as I said, you mentioned it very well, frequent engagement, right? For example, we do every morning, we do a huddle session, which is only 15 minutes with our management team. Right. And that kind of sets us for the day, right? We look at our, and cameras on, obviously. I mean, this is a must, right? I mean, if you have a Zoom call, camera off, for me, I might as well not have a call, right? And seeing everybody every morning, right? Having their morning coffee and updating each other, that creates engagement, right? And if you create that every day, so you don't feel detached from your colleagues. So we try to push a lot of those daily routines that you might have in the office, just more in a work environment, and trying to make it less forced and more casual as well, right? So as you also mentioned very well, saying somebody happy birthday or things like that, this is extremely valuable, not just contacting somebody when you need it. So that's from our side.
And Abhinav, how about yourself? What are some of the ways in which, one, you track the work that gets done, but also communicate with the team?
Yeah, so this I think question actually has two parts. One is engagement and the second is productivity. Whenever you are hiring someone, when you're going to work with someone, whether he's a senior level guy or a junior level guy, I have seen working with so many people that two things are very important. Like, once you know that what is your professional milestone which you want to achieve in 6 months or in 1 year, and the other one is a personal milestone which you want to achieve. And if you have that clarity on day one with the person you're going to work with, I think that person generally gets to be very engaged and productive at the workspace, which could be as simple as that is like, I want to take 24 hours off on my birthday. That's it. That could be a very simple milestone for someone. Or for someone, it could be who is like very senior, that I want to send my kid for a sailing lesson, and I want to watch that sailing lesson with my kid. So that's the part which I'm talking about. Like, having that clarity really with your employee and with your colleague is very important. And that's where you see that they by themselves start coming and start reporting more things to you. So that comes to the part of where we talk about tracking, which comes from trust. Now, of course, we have seen, because of this, so many OKR product managers coming in and who are just tracking and operating and building these reverse ELT and all those tools for you so that you can track. At Deel, we do the same, right? But one of the most important part which we do as well, and which the company should do, is we are very transparent about our metrics. It's not being hidden. Like, our company level metrics are not just for the board. We do our board meetings, which are also for our team members. Like, a day after our board meetings, our CEO presents to everyone and everyone is ready to talk and see it. We do product meetings every week or every second week. We do our open meetings with everyone, that everyone can talk and hear what's happening. And that, I think, is a very straightforward way to go forward in terms of having every employee engaged and productive. Of course, multiple tools which are getting developed to track and make life easier for people. But if you cannot have trust in your employees whom you're going to work with, those tools are not going to be of any use.
Abhinav, something that you said, I think that really resonated with me was that concept of transparency as well. So obviously, like there's the transparency from a data perspective and a success perspective, so that everyone can see the journey that you're going on together. Something else that I feel is really important with communication, particularly with remote teams, is transparency around performance. So if I've done something that could be done better, if there's some tips or tricks that someone can share with me to help my performance improve for the next time, I really respect and appreciate that direct and honest communication. It's really easy for people to misinterpret or misunderstand something that's being said, I think particularly when it's remote. So being willing to have that forthright dialogue is so fundamental to, I think, ensuring that people get the chance to improve, correct, and learn, right? So I think that really resonated with me.
Yeah, I also want to add one thing that I think what we are trying to do internally is, sometimes there's certain small things that you do when you're in an office, in a physical environment that work, and also related to productivity here and metrics, right? So we used to write our sales metrics on a whiteboard in our office, right? I mean, it's a very small thing, right? You enter every morning and you see how much we managed in sales the day before, right, or the months before, and that creates that sense of engagement, right? You enter that office and you want to move that metric, right? Everybody from all the roles and all the employees, right? So if you're in a virtual setup, obviously that is a bit more challenging, right? And that's what we're also trying to do. And this, going back to your point of transparency, right? Those things, recreating them in a virtual setup, and trying to get that alignment towards what is your final goal and how do you get there, does create a lot of engagement and does eventually also increase your productivity because you want to move that number, right? And this is what I think it's also all about, taking those small things that that in a physical setup works and replicating them virtually, right? Just wanted to add that.
That's actually amazing. We do something very similar in our general Slack channel, which is a channel that by default, everybody joins as soon as they join the company. Every morning, we kick it off with showcasing how many demos were performed the day before. So we start the day knowing exactly what the team did yesterday and how much further along we are to our goal of that month, year, quarter. So we definitely see, and people get excited. Sometimes people get upset if we didn't do enough and rally around it and come up with ideas. And it makes it so that, someone who's maybe not actively thinking about that says, oh, I've seen that you did, fewer demos than forecasted. Here are some 3 ideas that I had sitting in my home. And other times it's an opportunity for celebration. So I definitely agree with that. And Jonathan, you mentioned the thing around transparency. I think one additional benefit of transparency, especially when hiring remotely, is there are so many different cultures that we hire from. The way in which I would subtly communicate as a Turkish Canadian is very different than the way in which an Israeli person who I work with would communicate. So really the only thing you can rely on is transparency. Otherwise, it just becomes this confusing mess of, I don't know what they said, or I walk away thinking they definitely understood what I meant. And it's just, a few months down the road and everybody's confused and not particularly productive. And so we discussed a lot around, communication and how to keep people engaged, but then there's a separate thing, culture. And if anybody, you walk into, I guess, and if we think about it in a traditional sense, in an office or any organization, even remote, that have a good, strong organization, there's culture that almost feels, sometimes cult-like. How do you go about building culture in a remote setting? And Ilya, I think you have a ton of experience in this space, especially being in an events space yourself. Would you like to kick us off around culture?
Yeah, so look, in our case, obviously we've, as an organization, we've been doing a lot of events across Southeast Asia, and we've been focusing on the largest festivals, sport events, and so on. And in the role before COVID, we often, the operational teams especially, were often, working weekends and nights during those events. And that created an incredible culture. right? Because eventually, your colleagues are becoming your best friends because you're spending weekends with them. And everybody who works for us, they love the entertainment segment, they love the events part, and that binds them even farther, right? Now, we did face a major challenge, obviously, last year that COVID hit, the world, and we were not able to do as many events as we were doing before. Before we were doing on average around 20-30 large scale events a month, and then it went to almost zero. So how do you keep the culture in that sense? How do you make it to make sure that your people know, like, have that tacit knowledge of what they can do and what they cannot do, right? And so I think few things. One is having proper, I would say, feedback loops, and making sure that if somebody misunderstands something, or if somebody makes a mistake, right? I think it's important to have a quick feedback loop on every action like that, right? And you can do that online, right? And we're a company that we know we do mistakes, and we're very forgiving for mistakes, but we're not very forgiving if a mistake is done and nothing has been done about it, right? And nobody. So we encourage really everybody to support each other and have that frequent feedbacks loops on what is happening, right? So if you feel that somebody, maybe first time they didn't understand what you mean because you're from a different country, and we have in our company about 20 different nationalities, right? So that is one, right? The second part I think is important, and I think Abhinav mentioned that, is that trust and being able to communicate freely, right? Because easy to say to give a feedback loop, but if people are shy and they don't want to express what they really think, then that doesn't work, right? So I think a frequent feedback loop combined with that trust of that, even if you say your opinion, even if you correct somebody, the person will not take it personally, but will take it constructively. That can be done only if you go beyond just the transactional interactions. So in order to build that culture of trust, we do a lot of sessions that are not linked to work, right? So as I said, we spent before a lot of times at events where created that friendship. So we try to replicate that as well in online setups. One of the things, concrete things that we do is, for example, we call them chat pods, right? So we gather 5 or 6 employees or team members together, and we have one rule: you don't talk about work, right? So we talk about everything which is not work related, right? You talk about your favorite movies, recipes, what is your dreams, etc., right? So that breaks a little bit that barrier of not being able to speak up. And we mix the teams, right? It could be junior, senior people, doesn't really matter, right? We do a lot of still online context. We just done a TikTok online context with dancing context. And again, the idea is that everybody has to do a dancing video. It might be embarrassing, but it also breaks that level of whatever, right? Even if I don't know how to dance, I do it. And then people will perceive it okay, right? So I think we do a lot of groundwork in breaking that barrier in the communication, but that will not work if obviously there's no that second component, which is the the feedback loop, right? So combined two, I think this can be very powerful and can create a great culture.
Got it. Thank you so much for sharing. Abhinav, how about yourself?
Yeah, so first, Ilya was trying to convince me earlier in the call that I should join TikTok and should do the dance challenge. So
You definitely should.
Yeah. So coming on to the culture building part, generally we see that in a startup, we pass on this responsibility to the CEO, and we pass on this responsibility to the head of people ops or HR, traditionally, right? But Deel has no one as head of people ops, so we don't have people ops team, or we don't have a HR team. And how we are able to manage that, and the reason is we are able to manage the culture of the company is because of two reasons. One is vision has been very well defined, and why we always look at the CEO for seeing that, oh, he's going to define the culture of the company, because we think that the CEO is defining the vision, which is very true for our company as well. But the vision is so simply defined for each and every one of the managers that we actually manage the team culture really well as well. We understand the culture, that what the CEO is trying to build for us. And the second part which comes into picture, which I think is sometimes very important, is that when you define a role, responsibility, and metric really well for each and every person, and not defining metrics where people are confused and then they're trying to see that where do they fit in the company. That's what they're trying. Like at a startup, we are trying to find a market positioning. Same way, every employee, every remote worker is trying to find its own position in the company. And if you give this guy random role, responsibility not very well defined with random metric, he's not going to fit into the culture of the company. And so those two things which I feel is very important. Number one, vision to be very clear, which you can explain it to your mother. Number two, have a very clear role, responsibility, and metric for your employee so that they can spend time in understanding the culture of the company. They can find themselves fitting into that part. And of course, we have people from 46 countries, various cultures. Uh, Making sure that all of those things you are respecting each and every one who are there, and having those conversations, as of course plays a very crucial role as well.
Jonathan, how about yourself? Anything to add around culture?
I'm actually a little bit sad because Ilya didn't ask me to do a TikTok dance video, so he obviously knows I'm a bad dancer.
Next time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I think the guys have summed it up really well. Culture is an active effort. I think the things that you would do in an offline world, as Ilya said, you should definitely do it in an online world. So at Rapyd, we really put a big focus on team building activities. Because those offsites that you used to have together, those coffee chats, the drinks after work, or a sandwich together, that goes a long way to building camaraderie. So I think you need to do that in an online situation, and when you do it, you need to invest in doing it properly. And that doesn't mean spending a lot of money, but you have to try and be creative in the ideas or the formats or the forums and how you do it, because no one wants to get on a team call at 8 o'clock on a Friday night that's completely silent. Right. So, the stakeholders need to kind of actively get together to try and make it a fun and engaging event. And, the type of fun and engaging event we found really successful is something that breaks down barriers, something that helps each other get to know each other better. So, what are some strange or unique facts about yourself that someone might not know? And you can kind of turn that into a trivia game as an example. And by, showing that humility, by showing that openness, I think it really builds that strong positive culture. So when you're back in the trenches together on Monday, everyone kind of feels like they're in it together, and that there's a flat structure and everyone believes in each other. So I think that's really important overall. And I think my comment in summary is just it takes active effort. I think it doesn't matter if you're the CEO, if you're the intern, everyone can help, everyone can drive the culture, everyone can make a difference, and everyone needs to try for it to be successful. Thanks, Meltem.
Got it. That's very helpful. I'll add one thing and then I'll move us to the next question. One of the things that we found works really well in Deel is also just like stating what the culture is, and making it very clear. So we have, a few things that we say, but one of them is, we are critical optimists. And in just saying that and, claiming that we are that also gives people the opportunity to really double down on that, and act in accordance with that. So that's also been very powerful, just like really critically thinking about like, what are you? What are the things that you want to be actively a part of your culture, instead of like letting it just kind of get away from you. And obviously there will be parts of culture that organically build, there should be, but there needs to also be some support on like when someone welcomes, it's like, hey, here are the kind of people that we are and the kind of company that we build. So thank you everyone for sharing the culture. And now this is one of my favorite bits, because I always end up learning so much in these moments of a webinar. What are some of the tools that you would recommend for remote work? There are the obvious like the Slack and Zoom, but what are some other tools that you found are very cool? And it doesn't have to be only work related. It can be this amazing tool you use to play games, and TikTok for dance competitions. Why don't we, whoever wants to take the first step, let's go with Abhinav first, and then I'd love to hear some tools from everyone.
Put a tick mark here next to Deel. So of course, money is the most important part. If you just look into Asia, 55% of the people don't get paid on time, or they don't get paid at all if they're doing remote work. And I think that's a big problem which we're solving. Everyone can learn about Deel. The other than that, like what I have realized, and I keep repeating in every webinar, Notion has been really good for me. Given I was the only person in GMT +8 time zone, not many people around in ±5 hours of time zone, which I was working on. I felt that whatever every team was doing, they were noting down their questions. They were telling about how the sales process happens, how growth happens, how marketing happens. Everyone kept putting their notes on Notion. And that helped me learn a lot about the company in the first 10 days itself. Even, and I don't need everyone's help to be continuously training me and tracking my progress, or rather like training part, right, is Notion played a very crucial role for me. And I highly recommend that tool for everyone in their remote company whenever they're trying to set up something.
I would definitely second that. Ilya, how about yourself? What are some of the tools that you guys have found helpful?
Look, I was just trying to look up the name. So we did an experiment last year that worked out pretty cool, I would say. Nothing to do with like the usual chats, but it's more again for the fun part. So we call it Pouch Olympics, right? So we did it before Christmas for a period of like, I think 1 month. Across all our offices, we call it Pouch Olympics. So which consisted in a set of competitions, right? We created different groups, and we every week we were gathering together on Zoom, and there were a lot of actually on Zoom we can play a lot of games that together, that are very simple games. And I was just looking for the names, could not find, unfortunately, but so like games around words and etc. But if you do it like regularly and you're in teams and you have that final goal, which is in the winner of the Pouch Olympics game in 1 month, that worked very well, right? So people were very engaged. We also we call it a WhatsApp group across the company, where we encourage everybody to share things, as I said, not necessarily work related, but in general. So during that competition, there were like some dressing contests. For example, you had to dress like an Olympic goddess, and it was pretty fun. I have to say, you do these things and sometimes you don't know if it's going to work or not, right? But that kind of context and regular kind of online game Zooms worked for us very well, and I thought brought the company a lot closer. So this is just a concrete example that some of you might want to implement, and I will share later if I find the name of the certain games we played on Zoom.
Awesome, thank you so much. Jonathan, how about yourself?
Yeah, thanks. I guess, a tool that I would suggest that's not so much software, but more behavior is that old concept of shadowing. So something that, we at Rapyd have found really effective is taking a peer from a different function or business unit or area of focus into some of the work, into some of the meetings that you're doing, so that they can gain exposure and an understanding of the challenges that you have, the ways that you resolve those challenges, and then maybe even suggest new ways of thinking, or bringing new ideas to a problem. So that's been really successful, where even in things as extreme as sales calls, we've had product people come, or in sales calls, we've had technical people who write code come, because they're starting to learn more about the customer's needs, customer use cases, and doing that doesn't necessarily just help the product or help the result. It also helps with empathy. It also helps people understand each other, the challenges that they have, and kind of what's motivating them. So I think that's a really good tool.
Mm-hmm. That's very helpful. Thank you so much for sharing that. So we now have some questions to go over from the people that are watching us that have been submitted. Some of those specifically too have already been answered during the conversation. So I'm going to focus on the ones that we haven't really yet touched on. So the first one we see here is someone's asking, do you think certain cultures adapt to remote working better than others? And as these are new questions, anybody who feels comfortable or has an opinion, please jump in on whether or not you think certain cultures adapt better to remote working than others. Nobody?
Ilya, do you want to start, and I can add some stuff?
No, look, I think I would say it's well, there's two things, right? There's culture and there is personality, right? So and it's a combination of both, right? So I think personality plays a bigger role right, than culture, but culture does play a role, right? So, you know, if I compare, let's say, our, you know, Indonesian employees versus, I don't know, Singaporean ones, I mean, there are differences in the way people engage, right? Some, you know, some of them are more shy by definition, some of them more, you know, like direct, you know, probably. So, but however, having said that, I think personality is something that probably counts the most, right? I would say, you know, 80-20. If you have an outgoing personality, you'll be more likely in sharing and, you know, in participating. And that doesn't really, you know, matter too much whether you're from Indonesia or Singapore. But definitely you need to keep an eye on the kind of the general trends, and don't get offended if somebody, you know, tells you very direct something, or on the other part, if somebody takes you something across the line. So you need to know a little bit. But I would say it does come to personality as a key driver in this. That is at least from my experience.
Yeah, so exactly, like I think personality makes a huge difference. And Ilya is talking about person who is getting hired. I'm actually going to talk more about from the company which is going to get hired and what is their personality in terms of what the company believes in. So, for example, when we talk about remote worker who is working for a client who does not have a local entity, that person feels that he's like a freelancer, and certain countries culture just say that the freelancer are the bottommost tier of the workforce who don't have a dedicated salary. They might not get money on time, they might not get things there. And I think that perception also brings in from the client side. They themselves have faced this problem. They suppose an Indonesian company or an Indian company hiring within themselves. They're like, oh, we have worked with so many outsourcing clients, we are like an outsourcing company, we are like a freelancer. They internally building a culture which says that we cannot have a great remote team culture. But if they change it themselves, that no, we can build a great remote team culture, we will trust everyone who is going to come in, that culture will automatically going to build up. They will find the people or the personality of people who actually believes in that. We ourselves hire from 46 countries. We go for people who can easily be like, okay, we will be responsible for what is being given to me. We believe in the what you're bringing, what the culture you believe in, what you're building. And I think that's how it goes. So rather than pointing fingers always at people whom you're hiring, you should also look into the company and the client side, that are you going to treat the person who will be not with you, not sitting next to you, equally as the person who was going to sit next to you. So for example, I was talking to one of the company recently, and whenever they do Zoom calls, even when 2 or 3 people are in the office, everyone joins from their own laptop. They cannot join in a group. And I felt that was a very smart move, because now everyone feels that they are individual and they are in this meeting at the same level as people who are sitting next to each other. So that's my 2 cents there.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Anything to add?
I guess in the Rapyd experience, we have remote teams or individuals in places like Taiwan, Brazil, Mexico, Amsterdam in the Netherlands. So, our overall experience has been really, really positive, mostly because, as the team has said, we've kind of gravitated towards personality being a key decider of that individual when we've brought them in. So I think remote teams add a lot of value, they add new perspective, and I'm certainly for it.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Thank you so much. And I would definitely second that. We are 275 people across 46 countries. We do not necessarily think if we believed one was better than the other, we wouldn't be hiring across 46 countries. But here we are, and everybody, as Ilya said, it comes down to personality, and everybody can be pretty great. Another question that we have is, how do you incentivize, motivate, or reward to keep a remote team members? So do those incentives change slightly compared to those people that are working in a traditional office setup versus when you go remote? Anybody wants to go first on this one? Ilya, you're shaking your head. Oh,
well,
Jonathan,
I was just
right,
thinking, right? I was thinking whether, you should give different incentives when you work remotely compared to an office environment. I mean, I would say, as I said, financially, I would probably say no, right? I mean, don't see a major, why would you, change that. I mean, at the end of the day, as I said, you're there, you're incentive, you want an output, right? And that output, you wanted it before, or people were going to the office, or after, right? So that should not necessarily change. I believe, obviously, beyond that, there's other incentives that you might give to your employees. I think the incentives is that, you know, if you cannot be in the office, and maybe you are at home and you have kids, and the kids need to go to school, and there you need to be able to maybe craft your incentives around maybe some also flexibility and understanding that we're dealing with a particular situation, right? And you cannot, it should be okay to basically allow people to take some flexible hours between the days, because maybe they are just sitting in the same room with their kids, and they're doing homeschooling, right? So I would say the incentives maybe would be around, in our experience at least, around that flexibility, understanding that situation, and providing that. Obviously, you know, healthcare incentives, we do particularly, you know, we have a lot of people being affected by COVID related, so we try to also provide more healthcare benefits in that case. So if somebody would, you know, and we also try to support each other. We had an ex-employee that, for example, left the company, and he had COVID in a very severe stage. So we did a crowdfunding campaign for him, and we managed to pay for his hospital, and he recovered, and that was great, right? So I think, you know, I would say things around flexibility at home, work, and healthcare. This is probably what the two areas that we tackle.
Thank you so much. Jonathan, yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting question, and thanks to Nick for asking it. I think, like, we as people should never underestimate the impact of a surprise and of saying thank you. So, you know, you don't need to give someone a Ferrari when they've done a good job, but at the same time, like in a group forum, unannounced, unexpectedly, you know, letting the wider group know that, you know, someone's achieved an outstanding result, that's super important. And I think, you know, that builds morale, satisfaction, and I think, you know, excitement, right? Because that person then is motivated to go again and harder, you know, based on that positive feedback. So, you know, I think it can be tangible, can be intangible. I guess, you know, something else I think is really important is frequent small gestures. So something I've seen work really well is, you know, maybe on a Friday night for someone who does have kids, but it's had a big week, you know, the team is sending them a pizza or a pasta or something like that from their favorite, you know, Deliveroo or food delivery service. So just, you know, small frequent gestures, I think, go a really long way, because it helps people understand what they're doing is valued, their efforts are counted, and they're being recognized for that. Back to the team.
Amazing.
Yeah. So
Abhinav,
for me, yeah. So for me, Meltem, I think, see, in 90s or early 2000, we will hire a remote team, or we will hire freelancers to save costs. And I think that trend has changed since 2015. We are hiring remote team because of talent. And what is missing over there is there are boundaries, geographical boundaries, labor law boundaries, or understanding the culture, understanding how should we pay, how much we should pay, what actually incentivize these people are becoming the boundary restrictions for us. People are hiring because of they want the talent, they want the culture, multicultural teams to be built so that their company can grow faster, right? So number one, when we are talking about that, first thing is like understand some of the cultures require that they don't need salary in hand to be increased. They need more benefits to be given, like insurance needs to be important, time for kids is important, time for wife is important, or time for husband is important. That's a very important part for certain things. Otherwise, I have also seen people who just wants to go for hiking, want to spend some time with sports, they want to do the side hustle. They want to be entrepreneurs 3 years or 4 years down the line. Are we actually motivating that through our own company is a very important part. And traditionally, bigger companies have not been doing that, because if you see their offer letter, anything which you produce, even after office hours, actually the IP belongs to that company, and all those things have been given, right? And that just kills creativity. That incentive is not there. So the first thing is ability to understand, and the person you are hiring understanding the country where you are hiring and what is most important for them, and then doing those small gesture on a regular basis play a very crucial role for everyone to be motivated as well.
Yeah, I 100% agree with what you said. I think we also, just to add on last thing on that, allowing people, let's say we allowed people to do secondary education, like have another master's degree while working for us, and multiple examples. And then people don't necessarily go away. They still stay with you if they like the company. Or we allowed people to have side projects and even projects where they get paid outside the company. We still allowed that. And some people say, well, they will not be focused on the business or etc. No, that's not true, right? People just sometimes have more interest and they want to do, so don't block that, right? So for our experience, it actually worked the opposite way, right? By allowing it to do more, people do it and they satisfy their need of doing that, and then eventually still are very committed to the company, rather than the other way around. Say, oh no, you cannot take any external project. Oh no, you cannot study, right? And then what people say, okay, I cannot do it. Okay, fine, I'm just gonna leave, right? So I think it's, instead of prohibiting, allowing, I think works a lot better.
Definitely agree on that one. A lot of people choose remote work on the other side, not necessarily as the employees, but the employers, but the employees, because they want that flexibility and control over their own life. And as long as they meet their commitments to their company, giving people that freedom just makes it really increases the company loyalty as well. Jonathan, you mentioned something fun about sending people, perhaps a coffee over Deliveroo or wherever they're based. Now we have a question from Siddharth here, asking about how do you go about creating excitement when you hop into your maybe weekly sales call in Zoom, and then you also hop into the celebration in the same screen at the same office. You're not necessarily in an office being able to clap with each other or going out for a walk or going to the pub to celebrate. How do you create that example? And specifically asking for some personal examples. I can kick us off by giving one example that we've seen at Deel. When we were announcing our Series C, when we were announcing it to the internal company, we told everybody, find a bottle of champagne in your house, make sure you have it at hand. And our CEO joined the call dressed up in a fully blown up unicorn suit. That's not how he generally joins calls, but when you see someone kind of take that extra step, it was actually really fun for everyone. And it did feel like we were all celebrating together. What are some examples of ways in which you've managed to make celebration excitement, even though you were perhaps only connected through video? Anybody want to take that? Jonathan, do you have any fun things? Ilya, Abhinav?
Yeah, so very simple example, right? One is something materialistic given. So today my wife got her 2 wisdom tooth removed from bottom, and jaw is bleeding and all those, like it was a bit complicated. We came home and there was a bouquet and there was ice cream, there was Oreos and some juices outside our apartment door. And we had no idea who sent this. And later on, like after she sent message to a couple of people, then her team members who worked under her at Bain responded saying that, oh, this is from us because we know that you went through the surgery. And that was a great gesture because she just told them maybe a week back that I'm going to take a day off or I won't be contactable because I'm going for a surgery. And you were not expecting anything, because when people talk about materialistic stuff, you talk about, like, I think Rapyd gave a Ferrari or Porsche recently in a hackathon or something like that. You talk about that materialistic stuff, right? You don't talk about this, a tub of ice cream and a bouquet coming in and someone remembering about those things. That I think plays a very crucial role when you're talking about those incentives, keeping people motivated. And I think my wife is super motivated to work at Bain throughout. And not because of the Bain brand, because of the people who are working around. And you just told us an example about Alex, who created a culture coming as a unicorn, etc., and trying to motivate us, right? But that same experience is being passing to each and every of us, or as soon as it keeps getting passed to a team member, everyone keeps motivating the other person. And I think that's, from my side, is what I believe is a very crucial part of where you have succeeded in motivating someone and then building that culture as well in the company.
One thing, just to add in terms of creating excitement on the same medium, right? I mean, something we tried, and my laptop is a little bit outdated, but it was really fun. You can actually have all these icons on Zoom that are really funny, right? That you can apply on your face, like the filters. I don't know if you guys tried that. So you can have the filter of like, like a mask, like it's like a robbery or like a hat. So it does create that a lot of fun, right? And kind of, so we tried that and everybody was really, really engaging. And actually a lot of people switch their videos on because sometimes people don't want to switch their videos on because they're shy, etc. But with that engagement of having like these different filters applied on Google, so it's a feature that you can easily try out. It was extremely fun. So this is like a small growth hack.
I actually once got stuck as a pickle doing that and ended up joining an external call as a pickle. So highly recommended for people. Well, we are in the last 2 minutes of our conversation today. I want to thank everybody for joining. There were some questions that we didn't necessarily get a chance to answer, but we'll follow up with email to the people that have asked. We have your names. And any last words from anyone? Abhinav, would you like to kind of close us off?
Yeah, so whenever you are hiring remote team, remember one thing: you're not hiring for cheap labor. You're hiring to bring in more diversity, better culture, and growing faster. If you believe in these 3 things, go ahead and start creating your remote team. And yeah, all these labor laws and payment laws, etc., are the boundaries which Deel is breaking. So advertising Deel around there. And sooner or later, any problem which you're facing in terms of training, hiring, trusting, you need to just take a big leap and go ahead with that. So
Fully agree.
Yes, successful international collaboration takes effort, and frequent small steps are the best way to achieve that goal. Set little milestones and work towards it as a group. And I think for all those who are focused on it, you'll have a great outcome. When it comes to paying people internationally, Deel sounds like a fantastic product. Moving money is what Rapyd does. So let us know if you need any help.
perfect.
Well, I hardly can advertise my company here, but the only thing I want to say is that, guys, diversity works. I mean, I'm myself Russian by birth, grew up in Italy with Italian passport and living in Indonesia with Italian wife. With Indonesian wife. Oh, now my wife is gonna kill me. And so I'm just saying, diversity works. It can be done. Nothing to fear about. We're living in a global world, so there's so much you can learn out of it. So go for it.
Thank you so much for joining, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, just a few quick reminders. Hang on, let me share my screen again. All right, so I mentioned earlier that this event is in partnership with Deel. So if you guys want to know more about them, you can visit their website at letsdeel.com, or you can scan the QR code that's on your screen to enjoy a special promo for members of the E27 community. So if you use the QR code, or you visit the website that's at the bottom of the screen, you get to enjoy 3 months free, then 30% off for contractors, or 20% off full-time employees when you sign up using this QR code. So we will also be sending the link to you via email. We had some few questions on chat. Yes, we are going to be sending the link to the recording of this webinar, so you can view it again. Yeah, and then you can also find more upcoming events and programs that you may be keen on joining at e27.co/events, or by signing up for an E27 account if you don't have it yet, and getting updated with our daily digest. All right, again, a huge thanks to our panel for that insightful discussion that I'm sure everyone in here learned a lot, especially since the poll results showed that 57% of our attendees are currently remote working, and 38% of them is in a combined setup. So work from home, but occasionally reporting to the physical office. So thank you, everyone, and thank you for joining us. See you online again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.